Hello, everyone. I am Storyteller. Thank you for visiting this peaceful place. I know you are looking for something soothing to help you fall asleep, and I am here to accompany you. If you enjoy, please give me a like and subscribe, and let me know where you are from. Thank you.
Elf off the shelf. From the beginning, there had only ever been one rule. Don't let anyone see you move. But after what I saw tonight, I was afraid I was going to have to break that rule. The Duncans' house was full of people. From inside Mrs. Mitchell's purse, I carefully peeked out through the open zipper and saw dozens of recognizable faces. People who had come over to pick up Oliver and Squier's friends over the years. They were all laughing and eating and drinking merrily, despite Christmas having already passed. This I knew, because Mrs. Mitchell had already put me away for the season, which made it even more exciting when she had come back to retrieve me again so soon. Everyone was dressed festively in gold, green, and red. The Christmas tree was still brightly shining, and stockings still hung on the mantel above a lit fireplace. Jingle tunes buzzed across the room, and the smell of spiced cider simmered about. As I scanned the festive room, delighting in all its magic, I spotted a familiar face. But it was not just any face. No, this face looked quite like mine. So much like mine. In fact, I was certain it was mine. But was it possible? Another one of us had been granted access to such an exclusive event after Christmas? What were the odds? It took all my training and discipline, much like the effort I'd put forth when Mr. Mitchell accidentally dropped me in the toilet a few years back, not to call out and wave to my North Pole brother. Our mission had always been deemed a solo one. We'd known from the start that once we were sent off, it would be unlikely for us to see another of our kind again. Instead of calling out, I admired my fellow soldier for his composure and his stillness. His Mr. and Mrs. had him out for all to see. Not that we weren't used to being put on display. That was a rather big part of our job. But never had any of us, so I'd thought, been brought to an event like this. I imagined he was as gleeful and giddy about the whole thing as I was, but from where I watched, you'd never be able to tell. The sign of a strong soldier, indeed. Suddenly, a loud clinking sound echoed through the room. With a tap, tap, tap of his glass, Mr. Duncan had silenced the bustling crowd. "Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted you're all here," he bellowed. "I'm pleased to welcome you to our 3rd annual Elf Off the Shelf ceremony, where we, dedicated and loving parents, get to liberate ourselves from this torturous and time-consuming holiday tradition, now that our children have outgrown their childish beliefs in the magic of Christmas." A loud cheer erupted across the room, but I didn't understand what they were cheering about. Liberate themselves? What holiday tradition? Tonight, we have two families who will be liberated. The Halberries and the Mitchells. Please, give these lovely couples a congratulatory round of applause for their long years of shelving their elves. Another roar rose across the room, and it was then that I realized why Mrs. Mitchell had brought me here. Suddenly, I felt heavy. Heavier than I felt on the days when Mrs. Mitchell unboxed me, having grown stiff after months of storage. Heavier than Mr. Mitchell when he accidentally sat on me. I dropped down below the zipper of the purse, letting the darkness and the realization consume me. They've come to liberate themselves from me. But what did that mean? I heard Mr. Duncan start talking again, so I lifted my head up out of the zipper. Would either of you like to go first? Mr. Duncan stared toward Sarah Halberry on the other side of the room, and just as he was about to look in my direction, Sarah cried out, "I would!" Her hand was raised and flailing. Her enthusiasm stung, and I hoped Mrs. Mitchell would not be so thrilled to part from me. Surely, she wouldn't be, right? I snuck a peek at her face, but it was unreadable. Her eyes were glued on Sarah, who clutched my twin, Polly, between her fingers. Still, he did not flinch. What are they going to do with him? Chuckling at her enthusiasm, Mr. Duncan said, "Well, come on up here, darling. Bring old Polly with you for everyone to see." With Sarah now at Mr. Duncan's side, he began, "Well, Sarah, I can tell you're excited to get on with it, but we've got a few things to get through before we say goodbye to little Polly. Tell us, you dedicated how many years to this little guy? 17 years? Now, Sarah was holding Polly displayed on the palm of her hand, oscillating her arm from left to right to show the whole room his face. Whoa, 17 years? You must have started right when these little guys came out, huh? Sarah nodded proudly, but her eyes seemed to say something darker, nearly bulging out of her head. I sure did. Well, that's just fantastic. Really, really fantastic. So, let's see here. Huh? Can you tell me one of your favorite memories with Polly? Mr. Duncan asked. My favorite memory. Sarah stopped turning and pulled Polly closer to herself, inspecting him. I noticed her face soften as her memory scanned the past, and I couldn't help think about my own favorite memory with the Mitchells, remembering the time she moved me into the fridge. It had been a cold night in there, but when Oliver found me in the morning, clutching an empty pickle jar, his childish giggles warmed me right up. And when he and Skylar told Mrs. Mitchell that I'd climbed into the fridge and ate all the pickles, Mrs. Mitchell pretended she knew nothing about it. That was the moment I fell in love with the Mitchell family. And that was why I was having such a hard time understanding why the Mitchells were planning to get rid of me. We were part of their families. Didn't they see that? I guess it would have to be the time I wrapped one of his legs with tissue paper and wrote a little sign next to him that said, "In recovery. I'll be healed in 3 days." Ugh, it was such a relief not to have to move him for half a week. The room exploded with more applause and cheering. I'd remembered when Mrs. Mitchell had done something similar, setting me up on a small towel underneath a houseplant. Her note had said that I was on a vacation and that I'd be back the next day. I'd appreciated the break. Having to hold still in all sorts of poses around the house is not exactly easy. But I'd thought she was doing it to relieve me, a kind reward for all my hard work. Very creative, Sarah. And those of us who are still shelving our elves certainly have a lot to learn from your innovative ideas, don't we? Now, care to indulge us in your worst memory with Polly? We like to end on a bad note, as it tends to make the final goodbye a little easier. Mr. Duncan chuckled. Something about the way he said "final goodbye" made me uncomfortable, and Mrs. Halberry's sinister smile only made me feel worse. The worst memory with Polly? I watched as she squeezed Polly in her hands, and it felt as if I were the one between her tense grip. Now that's easy. The pause in her words held the room nearly silent, save for the crackling of the fire. It was not like the magical silence of stockings waiting to be filled by Santa on Christmas Eve. Rather, it was full of darkness. I couldn't take my eyes off of Mrs. Halberry and poor Polly, so helpless in her hands. And then he wasn't in her hands anymore. I'd barely heard Mrs. Halberry say all of it before I saw Polly soaring in midair towards the fireplace, his smile brightly intact as he was flung into the flames. I watched, speechless, horrified, trembling, as Polly landed amidst the blazing inferno. The fire popped and bloomed as it devoured him, engulfing his hat and body instantly in vicious heat. My eyes begged me to make it stop, but I couldn't look away. I wanted to scream, "No," and to leap out of Mrs. Mitchell's purse and lunge to Polly's rescue, but I was frozen in my terror. Why was nobody doing anything? Why did nobody stop that wretched Mrs. Halberry? How could they let? That's when the sounds of celebration finally registered. They were cheering. They were whooping and hollering. I peeked a glance at Mrs. Mitchell and almost fainted at the sight of her. She was clapping, smiling even. What was this party of horror? Who was this woman I had dedicated my existence to? This was certainly not the Mrs. Mitchell I knew. This was "well done," Mr. Duncan guffawed, patting Mrs. Halberry on the shoulder. Guess you were too eager to wait for the formalities, huh, Sarah? Feels good, doesn't it? She was jumping up and down and clapping next to him, a smile as grand as a child's on Christmas morning. Monster. She was a monster. All right, dear. The whole party thanks you for your contribution and your entertainment. Why don't you go join Paul? And we'll invite the Mitchells up here for their liberation, shall we? If my heart had been working, it wasn't anymore. I dropped back into Mrs. Mitchell's purse, unsure if I had the discipline to conceal my terror. Somewhere inside me, I knew the truth, but I couldn't fight my denial from at least trying. Would the Mitchells really kill me? Mrs. Mitchell's hand found me and pulled me from my dark haven. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. Not like how it does on Christmas to assists Santa's impossible task, but like the sensation of fear, where every minute movement and sensation feels important because you're unsure if it will be your last. I had hoped all of it would be revealed as a dream, but as I rose out from the zipper, I saw the same malevolent faces, all of them staring hungrily in my direction. I'd had no context for such evils, had not even fathomed such perversities could exist around Christmas. And yet, there I was, the target of a ruthless and angry mob of parents. Mrs. Mitchell was quicker and peppier than I'd expected her to be, scurrying towards the front of the fireplace, eager for her turn at murderous betrayal. I did the only thing I knew how to do, the only thing I'd been trained to do. I remained still, sitting poised and cheerful in her hands as she showed me off to the pack of wolves like a sliced Christmas ham. This is Skipper. We got him when our oldest was 2.5, so he's been a tradition in our home for nearly 14 years. I was so relieved when Skylar told me she no longer cared for the stupid thing. Gasp. What an awful thing to say. Carla told me about this little ceremony she conjured up a few years ago, and since then, I just couldn't wait for my day to come. A murmur was rising in the crowd when Mr. Mitchell made his way to Mrs. Mitchell's side. He wrapped his arm around her waist and said, "Oh, come on, dear. You're not even a little sad about it. It's the end of an era." People snickered, and Mr. Mitchell's smile grew wide. I recognized his joking tone, but now it felt like pure mockery. It made me wish I'd never forgiven him for leaving me in the bathroom that day. Mrs. Mitchell tilted her head in consideration and placed a hand on Mr. Mitchell's face. "Aw, honey, there's a lot about the kids being little that I'll miss, but this isn't one of them. Maybe if you'd been more helpful." She pinched his cheek, and they both giggled like mischievous beasts plotting their most vile acts. "I helped," Mr. Mitchell defended. This time, it was mostly just the men in the room, who laughed. You moved him twice in 14 years. They were great hiding places, Mrs. Mitchell scoffed. The toilet is not what I consider a great place, Sam. Okay, that time didn't count. I brought him to the bathroom with me and forgot about him. More to my point, you weren't helpful? Mrs. Mitchell pecked Mr. Mitchell on the lips. It's okay. I still love you. But you'll forgive me for being a little excited to not have to do this anymore. Mr. Duncan slung an arm around Mrs. Mitchell's shoulder. All right, you two. I can see you're just as eager as Sarah was, so should we get on with it then? We know Skipper's name, and I'm assuming your worst memory with him was this, toilet incident. Is that right, Sam? Are there any good memories with Skipper you care to share before your final goodbye? Lifeless in her hands, I willed her to remember all our good times together. They had to have been real to her. They had to have meant something, the way I know they meant something, not just to me, but to Skylar and Oliver. Remember their little faces, lit up each morning at the surprise of my new location. Remember how happy they were when Thanksgiving ended because they knew I would arrive soon. I'd brought joy to them for 14 years. How was it possible that they could throw me away? Well, there was one thing. Mrs. Mitchell's voice trailed off. I felt her grip loosen slightly, and a sparkle of hope twinkled in my soft, fluff-filled belly as she turned me in her hands to face her. Lifting me up to her eye level, she stared directly into mine, and I saw 1,000 memories swirling around her glistening green eyes. I'd always thought they looked like the most beautiful holiday wreaths in the world. I'd admired them so many times, but this time I begged her to return the favor. Which moment was she remembering now? The time I mowed the lawn? Or the time I built a gingerbread house and ate part of the roof? Whatever point in our past it was, I wondered if it would be enough to change her mind about all of this. Oh, never mind. All of it was just silly, and I'm so relieved to be done with it. Yeah! The crowd cheered, and my heart sank lower than the thermostat at the North Pole. She was really going to go through with it. What was I going to do? I heard Mr. Duncan spouting off more jokes, and I knew I was losing time. If I didn't do anything soon, I was about to be tossed into the fireplace alongside my now molten friend, Polly. Poor Polly. Had he even an inkling of what his fate had in store for him? Had he loved and trusted the Halberries as I had loved and trusted the Mitchells? I had not known him well, but I'd like to believe that if he'd had any idea about what they were going to do to him, he would have done something to stop it, even if it meant breaking the #1 rule. I was still gazing into Mrs. Mitchell's eyes when I saw her lips beginning to form the words, "Goodbye." It was then that I decided I wouldn't let this happen. It was then that I broke my stillness. I leaned forward and slapped her across the face. "How dare you?" I huffed, and the sound of my own voice shocked me, for it had been many years since I heard it. I thought we were family, but families don't burn other members of their family, with my voice being so high-pitched and quiet. It took a moment for everyone to realize what was happening. But once they saw Mrs. Mitchell's face, frozen in an expression of horror, the room fell deathly silent. "Skipper?" Mrs. Mitchell breathed, but by then, I was already out of her hands. I jumped up onto the fireplace mantel and raced across it. I grabbed a hold of some tinsel garland and flew myself across the room towards the Christmas tree, grateful that this one still had its star-shaped tree topper. I remembered long, long ago when Santa had warned us that if we'd ever had an emergency, it was the tree toppers that could quickly transport us to safety. The fear that they might catch me fueled my speed, and quickly I climbed through the branches, the ornaments, and the string of lights all the way up to the top, feeling every single malicious eye searing through my back. Once I finally reached the top, I was breathless. I turned to face the room of malevolent demons and realized my fear had been unwarranted. None of them had moved an inch since I'd sprang into action. Every single one of them was frozen, mouth agape, and staring. As petrified as I had been, watching from within Mrs. Mitchell's purse. I even saw Sarah peek towards Polly's ashen remains in the fireplace. I scanned the faces of them all, and when I landed on the Mrs. Mitchell, I narrowed my eyes. "You owe Schuyler and Oliver a jar of pickles," I said. Then I placed my hand on the glistening star atop the Duncan's Christmas tree, and like a sudden stroke of magic, it was I who was finally liberated. Swing a sparrow on a string. Angela opened her eyes to a new day, not knowing if it were morning. There were no windows in her room, and it could have been the middle of the afternoon, or even midnight. She heard no sounds except her own breathing, and when she awoke, she inhaled and exhaled heavily, as if she had just completed a marathon race instead of having slept for hours. Perhaps she had slept for days. She had stopped wondering about time months ago. Now she simply slept for as long as she was able, then stayed awake for as long as was necessary. She knew she would have to eat, that they would soon be coming with food, and had she felt stronger, she might have spat it back at them as she had done when they first brought her here. But she had swallowed that rage a long time ago. Now, Angela ate whatever morsels they gave her, and recently she had to restrain herself from thanking them. She feared the day might come when she would feel grateful that they had allowed her to live, when she might find herself smiling at them as if she understood and accepted the perfect correctness of her captivity. She looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror above the sink. Although her hair was stringy and unwashed, she remembered how golden it had shimmered in the sun. Her face was still quite pretty, and once she had heard one guard tell another he had never seen eyes quite that blue. The other whispered what a pity it was. If only she had a piece of paper, a pen, even a crayon. Maybe this time she would show them that she could create something useful and lasting that mattered to them, something that in turn would make her matter. When Angela had first arrived, they had eagerly granted the request of the 18-year-old girl and waited to see what gifts her imagination might offer them. She had succeeded only in producing a few formless scrawls that they said were not art, and some rhymeless gibberish that they told her was not poetry. They took away the paper, the pens, and the paintbrushes, and not long ago, the tall blonde guard, who wore the keys around his neck, had asked her if she might like to sing. Any tune would do, he told her. Please, oh please, let me try, Angela had begged. The next day, he brought to her room a small cassette recorder with a blank tape. Perhaps we will find the songbird in you, where we were unable to find the artist. Sing, and we promise to listen, he assured her. For days, Angela sang alone in her room, remembering what her mother had sung to her many years ago. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. A week later, she handed the cassette to the man with the keys and simply said, "Please." He stuffed the tape into his pocket and left without a word. The next day, the guard sat alongside her bed and informed her that he and the others had decided that she was no songbird. For a moment, his words had sounded like an apology. She knew she would never see the tall guard again. The wasted papers that Angela had filled with nonsense and the inarticulate squawks she had tried to pass off as music had convinced them that further efforts on their part would be foolish. From that day forward, the guards who silently delivered her food seemed unwilling to even look at her. Angela heard the key slip into the lock on the other side of the heavy door. She no longer pretended to be asleep when they came, because they did not care whether she were sleeping or awake. One of them always waited outside as the other entered. She heard the heavy jingle of keys and looked up. The keys were around the guard's neck. "You," she said. But the word was only a statement of fact, not sparked with the warmth that accompanies the recognition of a familiar face. Once uttered, the word sounded idiotic. "Yes," he answered, closing the door behind him. He did not look at her as he set the tray of food on the stand alongside her bed. She had expected no further conversation. And when he spoke again, his words startled her. They told me to say the other guard had caught a flu. He pulled up the small wooden chair and sat, although the chair was too small, and he seemed not to know whether to fold his legs. There is no flu. They wanted us to talk. His statement was ludicrous. She had not had a conversation with him in months, and those few she remembered had been pitifully brief and one-sided. "I don't understand," she said, as she selected a small bread crust on her tray. She had learned to keep her responses short, for the guards tired of her quickly. "I'd like to know about God," he said, as if this were meant as an answer. "Tell me how you feel about God. Tell me about your religion, your beliefs." "I have no belief in God. I have no religion." "Don't you have some sort of records about that?" She felt immediately sorry she had asked, but the guard ignored the question anyway. He fidgeted in the small chair. "You're an atheist, then? Or an agnostic? You have opinions regarding God's existence, or the lack of it?" He sounded almost hopeful. "I'm an apathist. I don't much think about it," she answered as she nibbled at the crust. She picked up a slab of egg yolk with her left hand, ignoring the silverware, leaned her head back, and dropped the yolk into her mouth. Her response oddly pleased him, although he did not smile. "An apathist? That was a joke you just said. Admittedly, not a very good one, but it was a joke. Then you have a sense of humor. Tell me another joke." Angela looked hard at the man, not certain about how earnest her guard's question was. "A joke? You mean, like, why did the chicken cross the road?" The absurdity of her question seemed to increase the guard's excitement. "Yes. Yes. Tell me, why did the chicken cross the road?" There was anticipation in his voice, as if he sincerely were interested in the chicken's intentions. And when he leaned toward Angela for her response, his face revealed the hint of a smile. "Perhaps the chicken was an apathist," she said. The guard's smile disappeared as quickly as if it were erased. "That isn't funny. I'm sorry, but that isn't funny at all." His tone became flat, expressionless. He sounded like a man keeping some kind of score. No points for humor. "Sorry. Next category. Can we talk politics?" he asked. "No. Sociology, science, history, law, philosophy." His questions now had become a formality, a checklist to be completed, filed, and forgotten. "No. No. No. No." Although Angela could not remember ever having had a discussion this long during her stay here, she wanted this conversation to end. "Perhaps I could tell you why the philosopher crossed the road?" "No, I guess you're right. That wasn't very funny either. I suppose you'll be leaving now." Her question had anticipated his next words. The tall guard rose from the chair with difficulty, trying to maintain his dignity when he could not get up with his first attempt. "I have one more question for you, Angela," he said. He had never called her by her name before, and his doing so struck her as odd. He walked to the foot of her bed and turned toward her. "Do you know why you are here?" He asked this without malice or emotion, with only the desire to know her answer, as he had wanted to know about songbirds and chickens. "I'm here because you see me as a useless bird." Having said the words, she knew they had always been on her tongue, waiting to be spoken. "I beg your pardon. You know, the sparrow who can no longer fly becomes useless to the other sparrows, a burden to them. I've broken my wing, isn't that right? And the flock has no further need of me." "I'm impressed," the guard answered. "That is quite a creative analogy from one who knows so little of creativity." He sat on the edge of the bed and moved close to Angela, as if to reveal a secret. Instead, he reached under the blanket and grabbed hold of her right hand, yanking it out from where she had kept it hidden. He held her arm straight up, and the pain caused her to wince. "But this isn't exactly a broken wing, is it, Angela? It's a wilted arm, a useless limb. It is not pleasant to look at. It serves no function, and it belongs to you. It is you." The words came in furious bursts now, like machine gun pellets, and he shook her withered limb as he spoke. "You see yourself as a wounded sparrow, do you? What happens if we take that sparrow and tie her leg to a string and swing her around in circles in a desperate attempt to make her fly? She struggles against hope to use her wings, her useless wings. And meanwhile, we swing her around and around and around, wasting our energy, wasting our time. And in the end, when we stop swinging her, she comes crashing down to earth anyway. Our time has been wasted. Her hopes have been destroyed. What is the point? Why even bother?" He let go of her arm, allowing it to drop. For a moment, Angela stared at the shrunken arm as if it were a foreign thing that did not belong in the bed with her. She spoke without removing her eyes from it. "A sparrow who can no longer fly can sing. And if she can't sing, she can still feel, can still love?" The guard interrupted. "That's exactly right, Angela. We asked this sparrow to sing, and she could not. But we realized she may be capable of love. The kind of love that could only result in frustration for her. Because the real question is she capable of being loved? Do the words she writes encourage love? Does her beauty or intellect in any way inspire it? It is unlikely that anyone would even try to love her because of that hideous limb. Not that all physical impediments are repulsive. Perhaps if she were only blind. Stop. Please, stop. Angela pleaded. Her brief taste of defiance had made her want to gag. You want to cover your ears, don't you? You want to block out the words, make me go away. Maybe you would even like to strike me, he continued. But you can't do it, can you? That limb just lies there like a dead weight. Do you see my point? I have my other arm, whose only function is to hide its companion. No, Angela, I'm sorry, but the time has come for us to stop swinging the Sparrow's string. His anger slowly dissolved, and he fell silent for a moment. He attempted to hold her wilted hand in his, but she pulled it away. Instead, he took her other hand. But first, I have something I want to show you. Something you need to see. He sat on the bed and placed her fingers on his left leg below the knee. Rub your hand along my leg, Angela. Does the calf feel peculiar to you? Congenital defect, they called it. Like they called yours. The leg is gone, at least from the knee down. Amazing what they can do with prosthetics today. But you see, I have my particular talents. I happen to be quite good at drawing people out, at enabling them to find a way to compensate for their physical shortcomings. And I can be quite decisive when called upon to make the kind of decisions that others would find distasteful. No one ever asked me to sing or to fly, but when they came for me, I simply told them what I could do. Angela struggled to pull her hand free as her anger rose inside her like hot bile. But you also decide who is to be exterminated. You decide who the state no longer regards as useful. What gives you the right? This gives me the right, he shouted, his breath hot on her face as he tapped her hand on the hard wood of his prosthetic leg. This has forced me to find my usefulness to others, just as your pathetic limb has forced you to admit that you have none. And I have no intention of relinquishing my usefulness by allowing you to continue your hollow existence. I refuse not to matter. The guard's renewed anger seemed to embarrass him, and he turned away from Angela. He ran his fingers through his blonde hair in an attempt to collect himself. And when he again looked down at his leg, he noticed that Angela's hand was grasping it. Angela knew he had been unaware of her touch until he had looked. When his eyes locked with hers, her mouth curled in a bitter smile. I feel this, she said, as she ran the tiny hand of the wilted arm along his wooden leg. I feel this with both of my hands, even the one you call useless. Tell me what you feel when I touch you. Does this prosthetic device extend all the way to your heart? Angela tapped on the artificial limb as if she were expecting a reflexive kick. A curious question, he answered. You might have made a fine idealist if you had believed in God. She moved close to his face and whispered, "To get to the other side. That is why a chicken would cross the road, isn't it?" He paused for a moment to look at her. "Such blue eyes," he said. "Such exquisitely beautiful blue eyes." He called for the guards to take her, and within moments, 3 entered the room, and another 2 waited by the doorway. She presented no struggle and went quietly with them. She wondered as they walked if one of them would take her hand. Cockroach Girl. The floor underneath. Barry shuddered and swayed as they took a tight corner. The clattering whoosh of the dark tunnel drowned out the tired silence of the other commuters. Barry's sweaty hand threatened to slide loose from its cold metal pole, so he adjusted his grip and tried not to think about what had made it so sticky. Multiple people had relieved themselves in this car over the course of the day. The sickly sweet mixture of vomit and tangy excrement churned his stomach, threatening to dislodge the chopped salad he'd had for lunch that afternoon. Barry felt the gray-haired woman next to him shift away from his lifted arm in disgust. He enjoyed the small reprieve of the starchy fabric peeling away from the wetness of his underarm, where it had been chafing all day. There was nothing to be done, he thought bitterly, unless she wanted him falling into her lap. He could smell the baby powder wafting up from her hair, and the crusty perfume from a bottle that should have been thrown out years ago. Barry threatened to go flaccid at the idea of her wrinkled, fat body jiggling under her itchy wool cardigan. She should be so lucky, he thought with a sneer. Barry turned his attention back to the more desirable object of his affection, the girl at the other end of the car. He felt hot blood rush toward the front of his groin, making it bulge against his tight polyester dress pants so hard he could feel the metal zipper of his fly dig into him. Barry couldn't take his eyes off her proper legs pushed together in an effort to take up as little space as possible and attract as little attention as possible. Her tight, office-appropriate skirt hugged her hips and thighs, exposing bare legs, freshly shaven. He could tell from here. She squirmed under his gaze. Barry adjusted his pants, even though no one on the bus was looking at him. He liked feeling like a potential threat. Barry knew he wasn't trash like the vermin around him. They all followed the rules. They went to work in their maze-like offices. They ate paste from tubes that barely resembled food. Humans were supposed to be apex predators, but the people who pressed in around him, jostled by the winding track, were so distant from their glorious biological potential, so detached from the instincts sharpened by thousands of generations of violence, that they had allowed their senses to dull irreparably from disuse, content to compete for scraps like the insects they were. But not Barry. He was in touch with his higher animal self. He used his God-given senses every day. And today, they were homing in on a target worthy of his attention. A girl he could tell would be a challenge. A girl who would force him to prove his manhood. A girl unlike the rest of them. This girl had her attention not on her phone, but on a book open in her lap. Barry craved the opportunity to see the title she was so engrossed in. He made a mental note to get closer to her when she got up for her stop. He also felt a surge of jealousy towards that book. He wanted to be the one who was in her lap, pulling her head back by the hair, taking what was his. The train jostled again as it went through another turn. The girl shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She knew he was watching her, yet she refused to meet his gaze. Barry found himself starting to get angry at her insolence. He deserved her attention. As if in response to his escalating need, the girl brought her hand up to her skirt. Barry's attention became rapt and utterly focused. The hairs on his arm stood up in arousal as he watched her, not daring to move, wondering if this was real. The girl reached underneath her tight little skirt and squirmed around. She had to be putting on a show. Otherwise, why would she do this? Barry glanced around, checking to see if anyone else was watching. But no one seemed to notice. The girl reached her hand all the way up between her legs, her expression unchanging, her eyes never leaving her book. Barry was now stroking himself outside his pants. He didn't care if anyone saw him. She was making him do this. The filthy little. The girl removed her hand from between her legs and pulled her arm out from under her skirt. She was holding something in the flat palm of her hand. Barry squinted and peered closer to see what it was. He stepped back in shock and confusion. Sitting in the girl's hand, antennae twitching, was a thick, 4-inch long, glittering cockroach. Its hard-shelled body, spiny legs, and beady head were unmistakable. The girl let it fall to the floor of the train, all without removing her eyes from her book. The cockroach skittered towards Barry. He let out an involuntary yelp that caused some passengers to finally look up and notice him. A businessman unceremoniously stepped on the cockroach, smushing its guts into an unrecognizable blob. The girl never looked up from her book. Barry wasn't a bad guy. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he needed answers. So, when the girl got off at her stop, he followed her. They emerged from the underground station onto a dark street. There was no moon out that night, and the glow of the street lamps were obscured by overgrown trees. The girl walked ahead of him, handbag slung over her shoulder. When they were finally far enough from the main road, where no one could see or hear them, he picked up his pace to catch up with her. Barry's footsteps crunched the leaves and twigs on the sidewalk, so his approach was anything but silent. He could see her tense up. Barry grabbed her by the shoulder and spun her around to look at him. He took a step back in surprise. There was no fear in the girl's eyes. It unsettled him. They usually looked more scared. He pressed on anyway. "What was that back there?" Barry asked. "What was what?" "That thing. Did you pull a cockroach out from between your—" Barry gestured helplessly at his own crotch. He couldn't believe what he was asking. "I think you should leave me alone." The girl turned around to continue walking, but Barry wasn't done with her. He grabbed her arm. "I think you should answer my question." "I don't owe you anything," the girl said, looking him dead in the eye. This disturbed Barry more than he cared to admit. They usually struggled to avoid his gaze. He was in uncharted territory, but he couldn't turn back now. His cock twitched hungrily. Maybe this could be fun, Barry tried to convince himself. He could break her. That would make this feel more earned, more challenging. He had been starting to get bored with his targets. Centuries of comfort and complacency had left the modern woman weak and pathetic. "I'm not done with you yet," he told her. Barry pushed the girl up against the retaining wall next to the sidewalk. This was usually when they screamed, but the girl didn't scream. She pushed him back. "Get off of me," she said forcefully, but Barry would not. He could not. He had come so far. He needed to know. He wasn't just here to satisfy his own primal needs. No, not this time. He needed to know what she had down there, what she was hiding from him, how she was able to produce. The girl kneed him in the groin, but Barry was not an amateur at this. He expertly leaned back to avoid a direct hit while still keeping his forearm against her chest, pinning her up against the wall. He pushed her knee to the side. "Hold still," Barry told her through gritted teeth. He was starting to get angry. "This will all be over soon." At last, he managed to reach up under her skirt and pull her underwear to the side. She had stopped struggling. He was grateful. Once they were convinced that there was no way out of this, they always ended up enjoying it. They would never admit it, but he could tell that they did. The girl was looking at him again, calmly. "Don't do that," Barry told her. "Don't do what?" "Look at me like that." The girl laughed. "You can't control me," she told him. "You're a dead man." Barry slapped her across the face. It was his turn to laugh. It was a humorless, forced laugh, mostly designed to disguise his fear. "You don't know who I am," he told her, more to convince himself than her. "You don't know my name. They'll never find me." Barry put his fingers in the space between her legs, relaxing into his victory. She was smooth, freshly shaven, just as he had predicted. But there was something else in there he could feel as he unzipped his pants and got himself out and ready. Something plasticky. A Nuva ring, perhaps. Or he didn't have much time to guess. The thing crawled straight out of the girl's vagina and onto his hand. Barry recoiled and flung it to the ground with a yell. What the fuck?
Does that answer your question?
Said the girl. Crazy bitch. Barry's head was spinning. He had no idea how she did this magic trick, and he had no desire to stick around and find out. He grabbed his dick to put it back into his pants, but the girl grabbed onto him harder.
Hang on,
she said. I'm not done with you yet. She parted her knees invitingly. The girl once again pulled her lacy underwear to the side, fully exposing herself. Barry watched in horror as a beady little head and spiny legs clawed their way out of her, the antennae releasing themselves from her depths with a little bounce. It eagerly ran down the inside of her thigh, down her leg, all the way to the ground. It was followed by another and another and another. Some of them scampered down her thighs to the ground, then over to Barry's shoes, then up his pant leg. He tried to pull away, but she had his hard dick in her hand with a vice grip and wouldn't let him go. Why did it stay hard while he was so afraid? Why wouldn't his body listen to him? Barry didn't want this. Other cockroaches climbed out of her and crawled up her thigh, over the edge of her skirt, up her chest, and onto her shoulder, down her arm, all the way to his exposed flesh. They swarmed all over his body. Barry screamed. They made their way up his neck to his face, their delicate, spiny legs tingling his skin, causing Barry to jerk in violent fear and revulsion. He shut his mouth tight and continued to scream with it closed. No matter. The insects pushed in between, prying his lips open. Barry finally succeeded in yanking his penis out of her hands. He didn't care if it broke or if she peeled all of the skin off of it. He just needed to get out of there. But the cockroaches kept coming. The swarm grew bigger and bigger, finding their way underneath his clothes, into every orifice available to them. They overpowered him. Barry couldn't hold them out any longer. He covered his ears, but that left his eyes and nose and rectum exposed. Barry stumbled to his feet and fell to the ground. He choked on them. He could feel them with every sense of his body and brain, wriggling their way inside of him, unwelcome, filthy, suffocating. Time slowed for Barry. He knew only fear and blinding pain. The girl watched, impassive, as Barry lay twitching on the ground. During those final minutes of consciousness, Barry was freed from any stress, repression, self-loathing, or desire. It took 7 minutes for him to die. After Barry's body grew still, the girl picked her purse up off the ground where it had fallen. She hung it back on her shoulder and continued up the sidewalk on her way home. She left her babies behind to nibble at his corpse. Eventually, they got bored. The cockroaches scampered off into the night to scavenge for bits of food hoisted into the dumpsters behind the dimly lit bars and tightly locked apartment buildings. Their grotesque image kept them safe. Fear kept them hidden. Disgust allowed them to move freely, unbothered in the shadows of the city. Like the girl, they were survivors. These old bones, flowery carvings, adorned the strangely shaped old furniture and caught Jacob's eye. Happy cherubs were encrusted with dust, and on the walls, the springtime imagery of oil paintings was draped in cobwebs hanging like veils. The floorboards creaked, and the weight of dust and neglect hung everywhere. But still, Jacob couldn't help but explore and get lost in the place, looking for creepy old things and ghosts. At last, he made his way up to the attic, which was pierced here and there by shafts of dust-specked morning light shining through the windows. It was filled with boxes and countless old and broken things, and it smelled musty and faintly of the sweet smell of rot and aged tobacco. Altogether, the scent spoke of a long history and was not entirely unpleasant. Stacks of magazines were spilled on the ground, and a ratty mannequin was wearing a straw-colored blonde wig. On one side, a line of well-worn teddy bears of various sizes stared back at him. Suddenly, his foot slipped on something, and looking down, he saw the parchment-like paper of architectural diagrams lying buried under a thick layer of dust. Then, at a small desk nearby, a black and white photo album lay open, revealing pictures of distant relatives he had never heard of. All in all, it felt like a strange old museum filled with oddities from centuries past. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something truly creepy was indeed hidden here, and he wasn't sure that he wanted to play hide and seek with it. He was about to turn and leave when suddenly he felt goosebumps on his neck. He heard a girl's voice sweetly humming a song he did not know. Then he saw her playfully skipping towards him, wearing an old-fashioned dress. She shimmered transparently, light blue and opalescent. She was swinging her arms by her sides, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she peered at him. And somehow, he forgot to be afraid. "Hi, my name's Jacob. Aren't you a ghost?" he asked her, his brow furrowed. "It's so very nice to meet you, Jacob. I'm Mildred," the little girl said elegantly, before curtsying. "And yes, I am a ghost. Isn't it obvious?" she added, with a teasing smirk that somehow got under his skin. "Don't tease me. It's not every day that one meets a ghost. You know, that's true. And in my case, you can only see me on Halloween. It's when I get to play for just 1 day a year," Mildred said. And then she jumped up into the air, her ethereal substance warping and elongating, rapidly funneling into the ear of a nearby teddy bear. "Why, hello there," she said in a mock teddy bear voice, waving the bear's paw. "That's so cool," Jacob said. "Yes, it's quite fun. I can animate a lot of things." "You want I should go into your parents' car next?" she asked, with a mischievous grin. "Nah, I don't think they'd appreciate that," Jacob said pensively. "But let's totally find other things to try." Then, as Mildred stepped out of the bear, Jacob paused a while before speaking. "Hey, why don't you come trick-or-treating with me tonight? You can use the biggest bear and pretend it's a costume." "What a great idea. I can't believe I never thought of that. Or maybe I just never had anyone to go with," Mildred said, her expression growing bashful. "Well, you've got me now, Mildred. Jacob, come down. We're going to go visit the town," his mother called out from the floor below. "Hey, I'll be back real soon, okay?" Jacob said. "Right. I'll be here waiting for you," Mildred answered with a nod. Later in the day, it had grown dark, and Jacob came up the ladder, holding a lantern in one hand. "My mom's got a bunch of candles burning downstairs. She thought that it would be cool to use candles inside the pumpkins. Some of them are scented, but I hope you don't mind the smell. Your mom sounds pretty fun. And also, I can't smell, silly. I'm a ghost." "Right," Jacob said, slapping his forehead. "Hey, Jacob, I have a secret to show you. How about I show you my favorite toy?" Mildred skipped over to the back of the room and into a large chest hidden behind piles of boxes. The chest creaked open, and Jacob went over to see what was inside. He was taken aback at seeing an old skeleton. It seemed small, like a child's skeleton, and he realized this was where the sickly smell of rot had been coming from. "Mildred, is it yours?" Jacob asked, eyes wide open, his throat growing dry, and his pulse running a little faster. "Yes, it is. Unfortunately, I died here under circumstances most foul. It's why I'm a ghost haunting this place, you silly boy," she said teasingly. "But that was a long time ago. Since then, I've grown so bored, and this was one of my most fun toys. Truly, I've had such fun scaring people who saw me through the attic windows," she added with a giggle. "I guess that could be fun," Jacob said, unsure what to say. Then she continued, "But here, I'll show you. Now, don't you get spooked on me," she said, jumping into the skeleton. There was a sudden buzz of static electricity, and Jacob's lantern shut off. The room was now only lit by the otherworldly blue glow of the animated skeleton. "Isn't it fun and creepy?" he heard Mildred's voice say with a giggle, seeing the little girl's skeleton come out of the chest and walk towards him in the dark with a lurching gait. Jacob was seized with a sudden terror. Had she been friendly all along, just to lure him here and do goodness knew what? to him. Jacob ran away, screaming and knocking things over. Immediately, the old bones clattered to the floor. "I didn't mean to scare you so much. Please, please come back," he heard Mildred's voice say with a whimper as he hurried down the attic steps. "Please, Jacob," he heard her beg again from further away, her voice no less desperate for being fainter. It was only with great effort that he finally screwed on his courage and came back up the ladder. His lantern was lit again when he carefully emerged into the attic. Finally, he saw Mildred waiting for him there, wiping ghostly tears from her cheeks, an apologetic look on her face. "I was so worried you wouldn't come back, and I'm so sorry for scaring you. I guess I came up with some strange games all by myself." "It's okay, and I'm so sorry you were lonely, Mildred. But now you've got me to talk to. Oh, won't you please come by and talk to me again later? I can still speak to you on other days, even though you won't be able to see me. I promise I'll come by as often as I can," Jacob said solemnly, and Mildred gave him a sweet smile. "Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, Jacob," she said softly. "Wanna go trick-or-treating? Get into the bear, and I'll meet you outside in half an hour." "Deal," Mildred answered with a grin. The fix, the shorts and t-shirt, clad exercisers of various shapes and fitness levels, sipping their beverages while panting, stretching, beads of sweat on their foreheads, drying in the cool evening air, dark patches on their backs and stomachs glaring like mournful, weeping eyes, making you feel guilty about unused gym membership that's about to expire. The tap-tap-tapping keyboard pounders, lost in worlds of their own creation, focused on the words appearing on their screens, working or creating for themselves or others. Lidded containers overseeing, like proud agents by their sides, offering encouragement, support, reward in liquid form for their efforts, judging you for your collection of rejections. The well-dressed dog lovers, their own drinks an afterthought, as they busy themselves making sure their pets have enough water in their thoughtfully provided bowls and are sitting obediently, earning treats by not making a racket. Walker and walkie taking a well-earned rest before heading home, reminding you of haunted rooms you can no longer return to. The lovers, the partners, the same-sex and opposite-sex couples, clutching hands across tables in one of 3 marquees around the hissing, steaming hazelnut, caramel, and vanilla-scented truck that has appeared in the park. Paper cup professors of caffeinated romance misting the air between glances with tendrils of tender loving steam, taunting you with wafting depictions of what was, what would have been, what no more will. The sights, the scents, the sounds of people alive, happy in this moment with their others or in their own skin, following their still unbeaten paths, writing the lyrics of their songs, being, doing, loving, with some kind of purpose, forcing a lump to lodge in your throat when you question yours, a purpose you no longer have, and perhaps never did. The something you did have, the someone who you loved and who loved you back unconditionally despite your flaws and transgressions, the someone who gave you reasons to get up, to self-motivate, who inspired you to be better, to try hard, reasons that no longer exist, the shame, the warmth in your hand, in the quickly cooling air, as you accept what the man in the truck hands you, the thanks you offer, insincere, as you meet his crystalline gaze and sever it, burnt by eye contact, by those smiling irises, contentment radiating from them like accusatory lasers, making you feel ungrateful for the life you have squandered and the breath you have taken for granted. The glitch-like, stuttering awkwardness with which you turn from that man in the pristine white apron and peculiar, cocked red beret, refusing the lid and the napkins, head hung low as you seek out the most isolated table in the most empty marquee, ignoring all others as you move towards it. The laughs and snippets of conversation from people in person or on phones, chatting to family, friends, loved ones, giving household instructions, finalizing meetup plans, complaining about workloads that are stressful, making you wish you could call her about such things, making you aware of how much you threw away, the jerk of the head when you accidentally meet a woman's eyes, the ignoring of her friendly nod and greeting, the severe swerve in another direction, to slink into a seat in a lonely corner, the escape, the length of gauze wrapped around your knuckles, successfully preventing color seeping through, the clean vinyl tablecloth on the rickety picnic table, the coarse wooden bench tucked beneath, the absence of someone taking a seat beside you with their soy milk, gluten-free latte, and blueberry muffin, the swaying attendee dressed like the vendor in beret and apron, but beyond that clad in denim, head to toe, feet strapped into hobnail boots, meandering from table to table, marquee to marquee, like the needle in a broken compass that can't find north. Cloth in one hand, multi-purpose cleaning spray in the other, squirting, wiping, cleaning in no rush, smiling to no one. He ambles, a grateful glint in his green eyes, the smooth, milky liquid in your mouth as you lift your uninjured hand and tilt your head back. The difficulty swallowing the lump, the warmth flowing into your chest, melting the frozen surface of your cracked, glacial heart, the guilt, the thought of the note in one jacket pocket, the words for your mother, the apology, the weight of the newly purchased box cutter in the other, the shameful plan, this unexpected stop on the way to execute it, the coffee truck and setup that wasn't there that morning or ever before. When things were normal, the same, when you tried and made an effort to be strong, when you were wanted by someone better than you, though you had little to offer, the rising, silvery disk squinting behind jostling clouds, the quieting day, the fading light, the blinding, screaming, retching recollections of champagne and cake and celebration for a writer's work selected for publication, the realization of a long-held dream, the receipt of long-awaited recognition, the saccharine sweet story of success, but hers, not yours, the act, the other attendees, oozing out of the truck, also in aprons and berets, with eyes that stir and probe, smiling as they enter the marquees, nodding at patrons, pleasant, friendly, nice, busying themselves, loosening ties on poles that hold up side panels, letting white PVC barriers drop to the grass, shutting out the park, the trees, the darkening sky, the faint lunar reflection, broken and distorted in warped, uneven plastic windows. The people in your marquee and others finishing their drinks and standing up, prompted by this closing up routine. The wooden panel in the truck's vending window swinging shut, the shuffling of feet and yapping dogs, the froth and bubbles in the golden brown liquid in your hand, spinning as you swirl it round and round. The lowering level of the fluid as you lift, tilt, gulp, watching it diminish like time. The last marquee, side panel, dropping, trapping you inside like another prison, beyond the ones of meat and bone and thought. Your cellmates making for the loose, hanging flap that is an out. The man reading the newspaper, the woman nursing the baby, the teenager scrolling on phone, standing up and striding from their tables, taking up position by the door, the sudden screams from unseen marquees on either side, making you jump, spill your last precious ounces, knock the bench to the ground as you marionette up, the utterances of shock and surprise, the disbelief and confusion, the discarded newspaper, the babyless bundle of dropped towels, the dark screen phone cast aside, the side panels rising as berated, aproned attendees duck under and in, silent, smiling, shifting like sidling snakes, the flash of pointed teeth as their lips splay wide, the panic, the joggers, the dog walkers, the writers and bound in love souls pounced on by newspaper reader, fake baby feeder, pretend phone scroller, and others. knocked onto tables and to the ground, clawed and pawed, clothing torn, chests and necks exposed, the yelping dogs that escape into the night as masters and mistresses shriek, the box cutter in your hand, your finger on the switch, the blade click, click, clicking forth, the fear clutching your heart like a pair of hands, throttling the image, the hand on your forehead and the arm around your chest as you hold the blade out to defend. The unbalancing tug, the forced turn, the visage of evil, hovering close, like in a mirror, the beret, the crystal eyes, the gaping maw and teeth, the hypnotic stare that pulverizes the fragments of your clay heart and causes your body to stiffen, the face craning close, the hot breath on your neck, the pop and puncture of flesh, the memories, broken glass, shouted insults, anger bloomed from the seeds of perceived failure, raised fists, temperatures, voices, bruises and blood, the teeth sinking in, cold like daggers of ice, the frozen lips clamping to flesh with rubber-like suction, the precious source of life exsanguinating out her face, screaming her dismay. She gave you everything, all her trust and faith, her support. She believed in you. You let her down. The death of love, the box cutter, propelled by instinct, blade slicing through tissue-thin flesh, serrated edge carving up gristle, the steaming, warm essence of all things that live washing over your hand, the gauze bandage stained red at last, the chuckle in your throat as a monster drinks its fill, the realization of futility as a monster surrenders, the smile on your lips, the roll of your eyes, the abandonment of hope and acceptance, the curse of being a coward to the end, the story. What was the story? What was it called? The relief, the story, the one that she wrote, the one about vampires, the release, the vampires who get their caffeine fix from blood, the revulsion, the blood that drains out of your veins. Now the story is yours. The Menagerie. Don Benway and his father were regulars at the hospital's oncology department and on familiar terms with Jerry, the head porter. "Morning, handsome," Jerry would say as he approached. "How are we today?" "A darn sight better than you," Walter would say, muttering behind his bandages. Walter had undergone regular surgery for over 3 years, and during that time, they'd snipped, sliced, and cut away so many facial lesions, he was almost unrecognizable. "Your usual seat, sir?" Jerry would ask, smiling as he pushed Walter's wheelchair. Do I have a choice in the matter? The plastic surgeons couldn't keep pace with Walter's disfigurement, and, as a result, he'd retreated from life and deteriorated both physically or mentally. Don was 9 years old back in 1977. when his family moved to the house that became their long-term family home. The Benway family attended a viewing the week before they moved in. It was the first time Dawn had visited the house and met Mr. and Mrs. Jolly. The couple had lived there most of their adult lives and cherished their old place. Despite their advanced years, they'd maintained the garden, and the Benway family would inherit an impressive collection of mature trees, shrubs, and plants, not to mention a curious menagerie of assorted wildlife. While Mr. Jolly escorted Dawn's parents around the interior, Mrs. Jolly showed the lad all the secret nooks and crannies in the garden, concluding her tour with an introduction to her tortoises, Thomas and Tabitha. Dawn's face beamed like an early morning sunrise when he met the wrinkly old reptiles. Their cold, scaly flesh and severe faces were both characterful and hideous at the same time. The old lady encouraged Dawn to offer them lettuce. His hand trembled as he offered the crisp leaves, and he laughed out loud when they recoiled into their gnarled shells. "Oh no, what did I do? Don't worry, they'll get used to you. Are you leaving them here?" "It's their home," she said, "and they'll bring good luck." She held Dawn's hand, and holding his gaze, made him promise to look after them. "I'll do my best," he said. "Let's meet the other creatures." "Yes, please," he said with twinkling eyes. Mrs. Jolly introduced Dawn to the other inhabitants of her garden, explaining how to care for the small aviary of chirruping canaries and the modest, ornamental pond containing a dozen lethargic goldfish. At the exchange of contracts, the conveyancing solicitor notified Dawn's parents about the deal breaker. It's yes to the menagerie, or no sale. Dawn's father's jaw sagged in disbelief, and he voiced his objections, saying how much he couldn't abide pets. The lawyer shrugged and made it clear he got paid either way. However, Dawn's mother, Anita, had fallen in love with the house and fought her corner. Mr. Benway backed down for once and agreed to sign, providing he had no responsibility for the damn beasts. So said, so done. The completion date went ahead as planned, despite Walter's issue with the caveat, and he refused to acknowledge the animals. "I can't see the point of those ugly old creatures," he said, shaking his head. "They're supposed to bring good luck," Dawn said, "if we look after them. But they look half dead to me," said Walter. "And they're so slow." "You'll be old and creaking one day," said his wife. "Nobody would miss them if they were dumped in a hole and covered in soil." Dawn's mother rolled her eyeballs and sighed. She knew how to pick her battles and when to walk away from a pointless conversation. The solicitor completed the legal arrangements, and Dawn assumed charge of his new animal companions. Prior to marriage, Anita Benway had enjoyed the company of an excitable terrier called Dougal, who now lived with Dawn's maternal grandmother. "Don't you miss Dougal?" Dawn asked his mother one day. "Why, yes," she'd said. "But I can't look after him here, dear." "Why not?" "Your father's not keen," she'd said, sighing. "Besides, Dougal's splendid company for Granny. Under the circumstances, Don was fortunate his father granted him any time to care for the motley collection in their new garden. The new-found responsibility was a life-enhancing experience Don would remember forever. However short-lived, it was the goldfish that vanished first. Mr. Benway blamed the local heron for their disappearance. Don accepted his father's explanation without question, and it wasn't until years later that he queried events. It was possible the beady-eyed predator had spotted the listless fish basking in the warm summer water. But had it swooped down and skewered them? It was doubtful, because they'd covered the water with a strawberry net designed to prevent such an occurrence. There was little chance of the bird reaching beneath the mesh, unless somebody had removed it. Walter's skin complaint started with 1 or 2 minor blemishes. He couldn't stop scratching. He had dry patches on his cheekbones, forehead, and temples that irritated him. The long-term result of a casual indifference to the perils of sunburn and skin protection. Don noticed him digging at them with his fingernails while he read his newspaper, watched TV, and during meal times at the dining table. Walter's urge to scratch was an instinctive and almost unconscious reaction. His tiny weeping sores would bleed, scab over, dry out, and itch like mad again. The aviary remained intact for about a year, until the last of the canaries vanished. It never occurred to Don that their dwindling numbers might be associated with his father's activities in the garden. Don was diligent about shutting the wire mesh door after feeding times, and couldn't work out how it was often ajar, or why Mephistopheles, the neighbor's tabby, looked so pleased with himself, licking his moist claws as if he'd enjoyed a 3-course meal. Walter dismantled the rickety wooden structure after the last resident disappeared and burned the remains at Halloween. Don asked for a replacement. It wasn't an option. "You'll just have to be happy with the tortoises, son," said his father, smirking, "and make the most of them while they're alive and kicking." It was after Halloween when Don first noticed the tortoises had vanished. There was no obvious explanation for their disappearance. He didn't suspect the heron, and Mephistopheles was nowhere to be found. "No point in worrying," said Mr. Benway. "I'm sure they'll return to trouble us again." Don's mother was a brave soul, bless her, and always gave sound advice based on common sense and astute observation. Anita had warned Walter about the dangers of scratching himself years before she passed away. She told her husband he was making his complaint worse, and threatened to either clip his fingernails or knit him woolen mittens to prevent irritation and subsequent infection. Walter tutted with exasperation at her remarks, despite acknowledging she was correct. But would he stop? No way. In Anita's absence, Walter persisted against her advice, and his condition deteriorated. After 15 years of itching and scratching, The affected areas of skin expanded beyond all expectation, screaming out loud for medical intervention. It's standard practice to have sun-damaged skin removed, Walter's consultant said, recommending an initial series of minor operations to remove the first malignant lumps. The surgeons described the offending growths as blossoms, as if they were intriguing botanical discoveries to be dissected, examined, and archived for future generations of horticulturists to study and discuss in their PhD essays. 3 years ago, Walter's consultant found a lump on his neck that looked like cancer. He took a sample, and the lab results were indisputable. It was serious. They had to take positive action. The hospital rushed Don's father to the front of the queue. Within 2 weeks, they admitted him to hospital and started a month-long course of radiotherapy, resulting in emergency surgery. They removed a golf ball-sized tumor growing on his neck between his clavicle and jawbone. Walter's condition had started as sun damage and developed into galloping melanomas. It was the turning point for Walter. The oncologist gave him a low percentage chance of surviving another year. Contrary to his prediction, however, they prolonged Walter's life a further 3 years, but at a cost. Don's father took on an uncanny appearance. His once inquisitive and bright features disappeared after countless amounts of invasive surgery. The tip of his left ear was the first item to be snipped off. His attitude was stoic at that point. "It's you lot that have the problem," he'd said, brushing aside the issue. "I don't have to look at it, and I'm not worried about losing it." Very brave, Don thought, until the other ear faced the same treatment. Walter was much less philosophical at that point. He often pondered on cause and effect, and cursed his years of pottering about in the sun and dodging his wife's factor 20. 2 years later, and he had both ears removed and 80% of his nose. Both nostrils were bloody gashes, above stretched and scabbed, beak-like lips. Both eyes stared, unblinking, out of lidless sockets, and they'd reconstructed his forehead and eyebrows with pale and ill-matching flesh grafts. In places, the new skin flapped like an unfurled sail in the doldrums, and in other locations, it was tight like a snare drum at a state funeral. His entire head had become a work in progress because the surgeons had struggled to keep pace with malignant outcrops. They passed him around the department for every aspiring surgeon to add to the disfigured conglomeration, rebuilding his features as if he were an ancient building in need of a facelift, bashed back into shape, and finished with a few quick licks of skin-toned emulsion. It's easy to underestimate the psychological damage inflicted. Walter's habits changed to accommodate the process of assessment, consultation, and surgical procedure. He seldom ventured out during daylight, And then, with a great coat and a raised collar, his own shell-like protection, like a reptilian secret agent, disguising himself and hiding from the world, lest he draw aghast reactions or pitiful, tight-lipped expressions of sympathy. It was tranquil to watch the slow transformation unfold, and heartbreaking to witness him become a wretched creature, hobbling about like the monstrous denizen of Geneva that Mary Shelley transformed into a famous fictional creation, stitched together from ill-matched body parts and second-hand components, and destined to a lonely existence, or hounded by ignorant townsfolk baying for blood. For the last year, every part of Walter's life revolved around the work required to fix him up and restore some degree of his former dignity. Given the state of his face since they started tweaking and tinkering with his facial lesions, he would have been better off employing Cecilia Jimenez to restore his looks. At least her work was consistent, as poor as it may be. In Walter's case, it looked as if they'd invited a dozen Cecilias to have a go. Don couldn't help looking at his father and thinking about the absent tortoises, their unblinking eyes, angular beaks, and scaly reptilian skin. He didn't believe in reincarnation, but Don couldn't help wondering if the missing amphibians had made their presence felt in some awful and grisly fashion. Creatures embroiled in karma's stealthy activities, visiting the family, perhaps in some other guise, to remind everyone that life in all its forms matters. It was after Mr. Benway's recent funeral that Don discovered the remains of Thomas and Tabitha. He was turning over the soil to the rear of the old family home when his spade hit something hard. After further investigation in the immediate area, Don unearthed not one, but 2 hollowed-out tortoise shells, their former inhabitants long reclaimed back to the earth, with the grim remains at his feet and the childhood memories of the Menagerie's quiet demise. Don clenched his jaw and drew a long breath. What would drive any creature to burrow into the ground to die? A question he had long abandoned returned to haunt him. Surely it wasn't deliberate. The identity thief. This is the hunter's badge of glory, that he protects and tends his quarry, hunts with honor, as is due, and through the beast to God is true. Jagermeister by Oscar von Riesenthal, taken from the back of a Jägermeister bottle, half full. I am left to imagine the circumstances of a most unusual case, which has the Grimlace's handiwork written all over it. The Grimlace has stolen another victim's visage and memories, leaving her a withered amnesiac. She was wandering ghost-like amid the streets of Frankfurt, with no idea how to return or where she called home. My name is Hildegard Köppen, I tell her, but everyone calls me Hilda. Pleased to meet you. And she trails off, unable to remember her own name. It's okay, my dear. This is all quite normal, I tell her. I turn on my dictaphone and make my report. It is 23:36 in the evening. The patient's name is Greta Thunderberg. The patient is approximately 32 years of age, according to confirmed medical records. Greta presents with symptoms of sudden onset retrograde amnesia. She reports no memory of her whereabouts, or how she reported to Polizeireiterstaffel HE off the River Main. She complains of persistent tinnitus, disorientation, and a total loss of recent memory, as well as an inability to recall various aspects of her personality, or apparently her own name. When asked if she is a serious person or a fun-loving one, she says, "I hardly know myself at all. I couldn't say." When asked if she enjoys large gatherings and social occasions, she says, "I should like to try it and see." She is completely flat. When asked, "Are you upset about your present condition?" she says, "I feel fine." Her face is frozen, as if she has had an excessive amount of Botox serum injected. There are neither any signs of physical trauma nor any indication of the use of surgical instruments, and the blood work is normal. My diagnosis is that there has been a sudden hypoxic event and a hardening of neural connections occasioned by calcification from exposure to chemical antagonists, causing sudden onset retrograde amnesia, all of which is consistent with a Grimlace attack. I release the patient back to her police escort, who thanks me and is on his way. Brainy. That's me. Cut it, treat it, study it. I do it all. Neurosurgeon, neurologist, and neuroscientist. Check, check, and check. And you can add dissect it to that list. Did you know that forgetting is actually part of the learning process? I'll bet you didn't. But not everyone has brains on their mind like I do. My true calling, however, is the hunt for the Grimlace. I have been stalking this freak of nature for over a decade. But this is the first time that I have ever been able to anticipate catching my quarry and finally seeing what it is made of. We are the Knights of Kadosh, a sect of the Scottish Rite. We are closely aligned with our brethren, the Knights of Tavistock in St. Petersburg. We hunt monsters. And my special assignment these many years is to rid the world of the dreaded Grimlace. After all this time, I have finally found a witness to the first Grimlace attack. Just past 1 o'clock in the morning, Agatha is coming to life. The tea kettle is whistling in the kitchen, and Agatha hums as she pours herself a cup, her hand shaking as she tips the kettle. Although Agatha was a precise woman and always had her hands perfectly manicured, the ends of her nails are growing out with ragged abrasions, and the nail polish is badly chipped. Our shared apartment is a high-rise at 140 West in West End Sud. There is a view of the city skyline and the Taunus Mountains beyond. Where have you been, Heidi? I've been worried, Agatha asks. Interviewing a victim of an attack, I say with a shrug. I called you 2 hours ago. Remember, Mum? But what about your dinner with Renee? Did you forget? Agatha asks. That was last week, Mother. Is someone changing your calendar? She asks, hands on her hips. You know there are a lot of doctors that want your position in the Faculty of Medicine at Goethe Universität, who would do anything to get you out of there. Oh, Mother. No need to worry about me. Did you watch your show? Is it already 8? Agatha asked. Mother, it is nearly 2 in the morning, I tell her, and walk into my study. I have to finish some work, Mum. Get some sleep. I can barely stand to look at her when I can't do anything about it. My mother was a fine physician and a woman of prominence. She has now been reduced to this dwelling invalid who sulks about being imprisoned by her own mind. I know she won't turn in until the sun comes down. I have given up trying to get her into a normal sleep schedule. After all, it is not as if I have one myself. She'll just sit on the balcony now, staring into space, as if the vista of the horizon will give her a chance to remember that she is in the process of forgetting. It has taken nearly a decade, but I am able to locate the stagehand who was present the night of the first Grimlace attack. The English theater was playing Saint Joan of the Stockyards, and Diril Verloren had top billing on the playbill. Louise recalled. I've heard of that play. He was playing the meat-packing magnate, Pierpont Mahler, Louise says. And you were there, watching from behind the curtains, during the entire play? I ask, jotting notes. Not the whole time, Louise says. Where did you go? I ask. At one point, I ended up going out back in the alley to have a cigarette, and found the understudy, Raj, speaking with a strange-looking woman. Louise says. We will come back to that, I tell him, blowing at some hair that has come untucked from my ponytail and is dangling over my left eye. What did Diril look like? Diril was a tall man, about 6'4", just stunning. He had a lean, lanky build. His coiled hair hung down in a shag cut. He had large, straight, white teeth that gleamed in the stage lighting. He had really bad ADHD, with a cutting, manic intellect. He was always gesticulating and animated, and always at an 11 out of 10. Louise says. Was he under the influence of anything? I ask. Other than his own self-importance and fame, you mean? Amphetamines? Adderall was pretty standard. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Louise said. I think that addiction is an impermanent solution to a permanent problem. How was the performance? I ask. He was a star. I remember his voice rising to a crescendo as he said, "Oh, everlasting slaughter." Nowadays, things are no different from prehistoric times, when they bloodied each other's heads with iron bars. It was quite the performance, Louise said. The words set off a spark of revelation. as I struggle to understand my prey. I think of the price of fame for a performer. One must corral and direct a revelatory energy. From the crushing terror of the stage, the spotlight that leaves one exposed and vulnerable, an artist must mine this energy for a competence that once achieved is received, applauded, and becomes the most addictive of drugs. Yet the act is separate from the actor. The skill is separate from the skilled. The applause is not love, but mere recognition. This is not connection. There is a deep spiritual appetite in all of us for true connection. Nothing looks like a better cure for being invisible than fame. And yet, fame is the great invisibility cloak, a mask more isolating than a veil of solitude, for it expunges the person altogether, elevating their vocation and placing all value in the performance of their craft. The person behind the act starves and is strangled and becomes a slave to their role. I think of how similar this is to my mother's spells of dementia and the forgetfulness brought on by Alzheimer's. In between those shining moments for her when she has clarity of thought, in between those turns upon the stage, both die and fade into oblivion. Returning from my daydreams, I ask, did anyone have any reason to wish him harm? Just Rach Egeman, a little worm of a man. That is what we called him. Irm the Worm, ever since he played some slithering stock character named Ermin. Name just stuck. Anyway, Rach was next in line for the male lead on one show after another, and he couldn't get anywhere with his career with Deerle in his way. He had the acting chops, but he wasn't a star. He was short, unmemorable looking, just average in every way, whereas Deerle was extraordinary all around. It was never a fair contest between the two of them. And you say you saw Rach speaking with someone in the alley during the show? I ask. Why, yes, in fact, we knew her. She was a stage designer, a mystic gypsy from the outskirts named Emile Scioli. A real loner, if there ever was one. She was a sharp-featured woman of about 70, thin as a bird, with a long pea coat. Always wore a blue amethyst Hamza on her neck. She was smoking a Marlboro cigarette impatiently, Luis recalls. Did you overhear what they said? I ask. Yes. Did you bring what I asked? She said, stamping her foot against the bitter cold. Then he responded, I have it. That was it. And then he rushed back inside with something in his hand. So what happened next? I asked. At some point, toward the end of the play, Deerle collapsed. When he came to, he was like a man possessed. He began pacing the stage, and then as he looked out over the audience, he screamed at them as if a wild animal baring its teeth and growling to keep a threat at bay. And do you know what caused this transformation? I ask. No one does, Louise says. Are there any working theories? I inquire. There is a rumor that Aisha was deeply jealous. Apparently, Rach had originally been cast as Pierpont Mauler. It was all settled. The playbill was printed. But then Dearl called the theater director and said he was interested in the part. They couldn't refuse. So Dearl upstaged Rach right when he had his big break. Rach could not forgive it. He went off in long tirades. Some believe that Emile Scioli, the gypsy, was part of a group that worshipped the Croton Duvel, the toad devil. They had tattoos of toads stamped on their eyelids and believed that this deity possessed the ability to erase memory, to turn invisible, and to walk among men as a blind wanderer, spreading the void of loss among the people. Some believe that toads are poor sinners serving a penance of tears and relegated to the dank, dark places and to a life of slime and bugs in order to purge their souls. Wandering spirits in an earthly purgatory, the grips and stage hands, who know Rach best, said that he has a pearl toad statue given to him by Emile Scioli that has the words inscribed on it, which say, Beng Tasser Toot. And they say the toad has a golden choker collar on it and is somehow connected to the affliction poor Dearil suffered. They say that Rach guards the toad statue with his life, and if it is ever destroyed, Darrow will be healed. This is very helpful, Louise. That is a lot to digest. I'll be in touch if I have further questions. I tell him, the grim lace has no shadow. It walks below the street lights in the alley, donning a black cloak. Its hands and face are green. Its face has no contour, just a flat canvas, until it dawns the visage of one of its victims as the grim lace slinks through the streets of Frankfurt by the train station. The streets are filled with drunks, prostitutes, and panhandlers. An old man sits with a bottle, huddled in a corner by some trash overflowing from a dumpster. He has rags about his shoulders, but his face is thin and handsome below his rugged, unkempt beard. The grim lace turns his green blank face to the man, who looks at him transfixed, and the grim lace latches on to him. A beam of translucent, opaque jelly forms between them, the bond, and the grim lace slinks in, bends to his knee, and draws out the man's visage, the man's memories, and shrinks within his robes to the height of his victim. Renewed, he stands to his feet, like a performer taking on a new role, and gains comfort in his own skin, lets the memories inhabit him, and he throws off his cloak, strolling into the square. I receive a call from the detective. He tells me that there has been a beggar who has gone missing. His daughter has come to the precinct to make the report. He tells me that the incident occurred near the train station I thank him, and I am off with my hunting bag to find the Grimlace. The cloaked creature, with the green hue to his skin, is pacing along the entrance to the train station, where the beggar used to set up each morning. In my bag is a mirror, a cattle prod, and a Sig Sauer 45mm pistol. I find a bank of deep shadows by the corner and observe my mark. The Grimlace does not seem to know that it is adorning the persona of another human being. It seems utterly lost in its contrivance, cursed, as Louise had said. It seems to be in agony every bit as much as the woman Greta who came to my clinic the other day. Does this creature sleep? It lets out a blood-curdling chortle. Oh my God! The beggar must have been schizophrenic. The creature is hearing voices. I see the creature begin the painful, agonizing pantomime of a schizoid talking to himself and arguing a rationalization audibly, projecting failures to a second personality or a persecutor. This is one of the most common psychotic breaks, where the mind cannot accept its own failures and must personify or anthropomorphize its afflictions. If you hadn't told on me, I would have kept my job. You were drunk. Drunk. It was you. You sneaky FK, you falsely accused me. You went to Lars and made a fuss. And see where I am now. I hope you are proud of yourself. Rat, rat, rat. And you are the one. You. A drunk. An ingrate. A lazy, good-for-nothing piece of La 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 la. Shut up, shut up. Get away from me. Police, police. I am being attacked. Ow, ow, stop. Get away. I didn't touch you. No, stop. Get away. Violator, violation. Stop hurting me. Stop talking, you dirty snitch. I watched the Grimlace rummaging back and forth, gesticulating manically, screaming, yelling, and talking to himself in a fierce blame jeopardy that I know from experience can go on for many hours. The paranoid spell of a tortured mind trying to reconcile an unacceptable fate and a cruel, unforgiving world that hands down curses and bruises with indiscriminate malice. I could find him again soon. I could make a quick detour. He would be going on like this for hours, if not days, until he was arrested, which would just land him down at the precinct. Back at the English Theater, I find Rach Egeman's dressing room. He is now playing the part of the lead in every play. He has ascended to the pinnacle of the profession. Ah, my adoring fan. What? Do you want me to sign the playbill? Yes, can I come in? I ask. Here, come sit, he says with glee, but I do not sit. I take out the cattle prod and place it on the carotid artery on his neck, and with a small squeeze, he shrieks and falls to the floor. I begin my search. After a few minutes, I find the toad talisman and stow it in my bag. Back by the train station, Deerl is still going on and on. I take out my gun and the toad statue. I place the statue on the ground. I fire a single shot, and the talisman shatters into 1,000 pieces. I look over at Deerl and see his face suddenly return to its natural state. I walk up to him cautiously. "I am Hilda," I say. "I've been searching for you a long time." "Where am I?" Deerl asks. "The train station is just down there." "What do you remember?" I ask. "I don't know," Deerl says. "You must be disoriented," I say. "It's more than that. I don't even know who I am," Deerl says. "Quite right. But who among us really does? We all wear 1,000 masks and scarcely know where the real person begins and the artifice ends, don't you think? "Who are you?" Deerl asks. "Let's go back to my clinic and see if we can't get this sorted out," I tell him, as we walk together in the eerie alleys of a lovely Frankfurt night. We pass by the English theater, and I watch as Deerl's eyes sparkle with intrigue. "What are they playing tonight?" Deerl asks. "The Courthouse." Almost 8:30 a.m. It was just before court would begin when his dead client, Mr. Black, showed up to talk. Benny knew the consequences for being late, so was short with him. "Why are you here now?" He spoke in a hushed tone to the apparition in front of him, glancing around as the Alameda County courtroom began to fill up. It would ruin his reputation as the best public defender in the county if people thought he spoke to ghosts. Mr. Black's gray suit, the one he used to always wear, appeared now to fit him well. His cuffs were no longer frayed, the holes gone. Benny tasted the bitter shame of his failure with Mr. Black's case as his stomach knotted. "You owe me more." Mr. Black's voice was flat and emotionless, so different from his last day in this courtroom, when the coughs racked his body, his handkerchief filled with blood. Benny's elbows pressed into the table. The air in the courtroom hung thick and stale. His thin fingers nudged the yellow pad, straightening it imperceptibly. He moved his 2 pens, one black and one red, so that they were even to the pad. "I paid my debt," Benny whispered. "With the last one." Mr. Black's anger roared like a fire, heating up the air around Benny like a blast furnace. The other, past inhabitants of this room, raged, their hate overwhelming him, even with so many clients. Benny prided himself that he cared about everyone, those he had saved from jail time, and those who were put away. Mr. Black was the first one to come back and visit him, though, after dying in prison, professing his innocence with his last breath. For the accused, Benny, king of the pleas, was the PD to get in, Alameda County. Most of his clients walked, or at least avoided jail time. Benny averaged 600 cases each year, however, so had some losses. And Benny felt the pain of everyone, but innocence and guilt have no place in the criminal justice system. And Benny had begun to wonder if his work meant anything. Some of his clients were monsters, and better off behind bars. Benny worked for his clients, but he lived in this city, had to deal with the crime and violence. Should he put his thumb on the scales of justice? Today, his past clients were weighing in, screaming in thunderous rage, frustration, and anger at what happened to them in this cursed room. "I shouldn't be here. It's not my fault," one voice called out. "I'm innocent!" shouted another, then echoed over and over again into a cacophony, overwhelming Benny. Mr. Black's face leaned in to Benny, his voice roaring. "Pay up, or else." Bang, bang, bang. A gavel thundered, echoing off the wood walls around him. Mr. Black left, fading into the crowd and taking the voices with him. Benny released his breath, trying to focus on where he was and why. "The court is called to order," the judge called out. A pale, gray man with red and piercing eyes. His head floated above his black cloak. Benny blinked, looking around as the colors of the room came into focus. A man in an ill-fitting suit slumped next to him, eyes downcast. Fear vibrated in waves off the man. The fingers of his left hand pick at the nails of his right, over and over. The scraping sound like claws on steel bars. He leaned over to Benny. "Mr. Benny, we're going to be okay, right? You're going to save me. I mean, we have the receipt. It proves I wasn't there for the rape. They can't put this one on me." Benny nodded, but didn't turn. The man's high-pitched voice whined like a broken motor, his breath hot. Benny suddenly hated him, loathed him for being here and needing Benny's help. His life depended on Benny doing his job correctly. Did this man even deserve it? Benny peered toward him, just a glance out of the corner of his eye. Lean as a mop handle, he could not keep still, shoulders moving, fingers picking at imaginary flecks on his borrowed suit and the skin of his hands. Benny's lip curled in disgust. He opened the file, the case notes in perfect order, the receipt on top, stamped with proof of this man's location across town at the time of the sexual assault. The man's arm crossed in front of Benny, his skin red and mottled with sores. He pushed the receipt with a scarred finger. "My Monopoly card. Get out of jail free." He laughed. "I need to keep that. There are a few other girls they don't know about yet." The man winked. Benny brushed his fingers on the receipt. Manicured fingernails pale over his dark skin, smoothing the wrinkled paper. A loud rushing sound filled Benny's head. They called to him, his clients who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, whose lives he could not save due to a lack of this kind of solid alibi. He heard them screaming, shouting at the unfairness, the inhumanity. At the district attorney's table across from him, a tall, thin woman stared with shrewd, cold eyes. She turned away to put her head down into a stack of files. Voices cried out from her table too. People wronged and insulted in the worst way. Losing property, their self-respect, or their family, and then forced to sit in this horrible room and go home with nothing but tears and anger. Their voices were loud. Punish! Vengeance! An eye for an eye! The screams racked Benny's brain, and he shut his eyes. His hands flew to his temple, pressing in to quiet their cries. Bang, bang, bang. The gavel thundered again. Benny stood, motioning to his client to stand as well. Benny clenched his jaw and knew the answer to his dilemma. Forget what was best for the client or society. Benny needed to look out for himself. This man will be sacrificed to Mr. Black to appease him and the demons chasing Benny. This man was guilty, of course. Maybe not for this crime, but for another, Benny was certain. Benny will change places, go from the defender to the accuser, from the protector to the judge. His fingers moved, just a brief sweep, and the paper receipt floated unseen, down out of the file, into the trash can. Gone. The trial moved fast. A police officer, serious and trustworthy in his pressed blue uniform, pointed at the man next to Benny. That's the guy. Whispers erupted from the courtroom. Bodies shifted on the wooded seats, squeaking with their movements. That man is just evil. I could tell right off. Someone said, the monster should hang for what he did to that girl. Another voice added, bang, bang, bang. Justice thundered down from on high. The verdict is guilty, the judge shouted, a sneer on his face. Next. Benny squeezed his eyes shut as the voices in his head roared out, echoing, guilty, guilty. The bailiff pulled on the man next to him. No, I'm innocent, he screamed. Mr. Benny, what happened? Mr. Black appeared in front of Benny, nodding before he left, with the man to his future hell. Then the voices were gone, the sudden silence deafening. Benny picked up his red pen to carefully put a small X to the end of the line of thousands of black and red marks, then lifted the next file off the foot-high stack next to him. Justice will be done. Monster with two faces. She tries to persuade me every time I see her. The problem is, she doesn't know me like I know me. She doesn't know I have two faces. One, an angelic face, acceptable to society. It's the one I show her and everyone else. The other face is an unsettling one, with the coolness of its dead gray eyes and the chill of its lifeless skin. I keep it locked inside the most hidden parts of me. I can't show it to the world. They won't accept it. How are you doing today, Nicole? she asks as she sips her chamomile tea. The smell makes me nauseous. I hate the smell of lavender. If not the lavender, it could be the honey. Whatever smell exists inside her cup, making her so calm. My fingers itch to shatter the mug in her hands and watch her lose her composure. I detest the way she tilts her head. Mostly, I can't stand the pity in her eyes as she uses her words to claw at my layers. She wants to understand me. I want to understand why she wastes her time. I've spent years with myself, and even I don't know how I became this sick creature writhing in on itself in front of her. Actually, that's a lie. It takes a monster to create a monster. Still, what happens when a monster wants to become human? I search her face like she holds the keys to my humanity. I can't complain. I smile through my words. Life treats me well enough. The clock ticks down on the wall like a slow, dripping faucet. 58 minutes to go. She watches me watch the door. I imagine I look like a dog thrown in a tub for a bath. I need to be clean, yet I watch the door because I hate the water. I watch it like my life depends on it. Any second, the door will crack open with an escape from this horrible magnifying glass I'm under. I wait for more words to pour out of her like suds washing away the dirtiest parts of me. Last time, we made real progress. I'm proud of you for sharing pieces of your past. It can be hard to share parts of yourself with a stranger. Her words irritate my nervous system, setting me on edge. I'm not sharing parts of me to make her proud. She speaks to me like I have a choice being here. I don't have a choice. I am sick. I am so sick inside. Society says sitting on a couch is the answer to sewing my aching flesh back together into something that looks human. It isn't hard, actually. When I talk about myself, I don't feel anything at all. It's like talking about a stranger to a stranger. She takes another slow sip of her disgusting tea and pierces me with her eyes. They're green with layers of yellow, like a dying lawn on a hot summer's day. Her legs cross in crisp pants, white like hospital walls. I stare with an empty feeling in my chest at her sandals. Her toes peek through the tops with a fresh red pedicure. Rich blonde highlights color her hair. Not a single strand out of place. She holds herself together with confidence and grace. I can't help wondering what it's like to love yourself like that. I can't help wondering what it's like to love yourself at all. Last time we spoke about your uncle. Do you want to talk more about what happened? How's your boyfriend? I ask. Is he still out of town? Must be hard. She takes the bait. He should be back the 1st of next month. We spend the next 30 minutes talking about the places he travels for work. She's oblivious to the way I can bat around our conversations like a cat with a mouse. I can't say why I waste these sessions like this. I can, but no one will like the answer. I waste them because I want help, and I don't want help. I want to pretend I'm putting in the work to be more human. Look at me. I am one step closer to being like all the other humans around me. I'm not an empty shell. I am not a monster. With 10 minutes of our session left on the clock, I feel safe sliding over another dirty part of me for her to clean. My fingers tangle themselves in the gray fleece blanket on her couch while I choose my words. I won't tell her the full truth. I'll tell her half and see how she reacts. You never know with humans. They say they want to help you. They only want what's best for you. In my experience, they will throw you under the bus the moment it serves them. I'm not condemning them. Don't get me wrong. How could I? I do the same thing and worse. Sometimes I throw people under the bus for no reason other than because I feel like it. I think I have an addiction, I confess. Her response is safe and neutral. A lot of people struggle with addictions. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help. I rearrange my face into what I think looks like relief. That makes me feel better. Her lips are glossed over with rosy pink tint. I watch, fascinated with the way they glisten as she speaks. What are you struggling with? I pause before I answer. I'm shifting through my memories of the night before. I've been seeing the same man for 6 weeks. His name isn't important. I don't bother too often with things like that. It lasted a little longer this time than it usually does. Thoughts of his hands on my thighs and his lips on my neck make me shiver. I consider how to tell this perfect blonde woman in front of me how sex is the only thing that makes me feel anything at all. 6 weeks before him, it was someone who only lasted 10 minutes. Anthony, was it? We locked eyes in the elevator on our way to biology. College campus was always deserted for our late-night classes. He had dark hair and a lazy smile. His brown eyes lingered on mine a bit too long after the doors closed, and I knew. I closed the gap between us and slipped my tongue into his mouth. He tasted like strawberry Pop-Tarts. He didn't move for a moment, and then there he was, sliding warm hands up my dress like they had a right to be there. Men are like that. I can't seem to stop eating, I confess. We have only a few minutes left of our session. She spends this time talking to me about how to sit with cravings. It's all in one ear and out the other. She tells me when the impulses hit me, try to resist for as long as I can. If I can resist for 1 hour, resist for 1 hour. If I can resist for 5 minutes, resist for 5 minutes. I smile and thank her for the session. You help me so much. I am grateful for these discussions. I can't tell you how much you've done for me since I started seeing you for therapy. I lie. I quickly shoot for the door. An hour of compassion, real or fake, is too much for me. It makes my skin crawl when people show things like affection or kindness. I wish she would tell me I'm disgusting. I long to hear her tell me I am a waste of space who can't be saved. Anything out of those perfect pink lips resembling the truth. Instead, she wastes all our time with empty words as she tries to convince me I am not a monster. Hours after our session, I find myself with a strange man I don't know. We had talked earlier on a dating app. He's attractive enough, with a single dimple on his left cheek when he smiles. Not that looks really matter much to me. I slide into a green Toyota Camry with a missing passenger mirror. It smells like cigarettes and old fast food bags. Baby, you are so hot, he tells me as he paws at my thigh with his calloused fingers. I'll be honest, there is a small part of me who wishes I would stop doing this to myself. I hate the way I give myself to anyone who asks. Yet, that's the thing about addictions. Even if you hate yourself for it, you can't stop. I take his hand and slide it further up my skirt. I hear him breathe in deep, and I can tell how much he wants me. His car brings us to a gloomy-looking house in a sketchy part of town. We are in a dark room that smells like sweat. Before I can blink, he is on me. His fingers are wrapping around my throat. He holds me down, taking what he wants. His other hand is lost in my hair. He pulls it rough enough. It stings, bringing tears to my eyes. I want to scream for him to stop. I don't. Like I told you before, I'm sick inside. I hold myself hostage and force myself to lay still. I won't escape from this. I'll stay until I learn to love it. If I were a bit more human, this would be nothing for me. I'd love it all the same ways all the other humans do. It's only because I am a monster that I feel disgusting inside. The night sky is empty, abandoned by the moon, as we climb in the car for him to take me home. He tells me how captivated he is by my smile, how when he saw it for the first time, he felt like he was the only person left in the world. He asks me when he can see me again. I already know the answer as I climb from his car to the asphalt parking lot, glittering in the streetlight. The concrete stairwell swallows me into its many shadows, and I am indifferent to the fact I'll never see him again. Another week passes, and I am on her couch again, the therapist. I can feel the bruises on my thighs. There are marks all over my body she can't see, even as I sit in front of her. It's always like this. How often do we sit in front of another person's eyes, and they can't see the wounds covering us? It makes me laugh. Part of me thinks I should confess. I don't bother. You can't tell someone about the wounds you inflict on yourself. Wasn't I asking for it? How are we doing this week, Nicole? I'm fine. How are you? Small talk makes me gag. Even so, I've learned to play the game over the years. It's empty when someone asks you how you are. They ask, yet I promise, when you tell them what's really beneath your surface, they will avoid you after. We're all liars here. Monsters like me are more willing to admit the truth. Ironic, isn't it? How are the nightmares? My body clenches at her words, like she hit me. This is what I'm here for, I remind myself. I'm here to fix my disfigured mind, my malformed thinking, my disturbed existence. I'm here to become human again. He was in them, I admit. As soon as I say the words, he's there with me on the couch. He tucks loose pieces of hair behind my ear and drags me back to our memories together. You're such a pretty girl, Nicole. You know it, don't you? I am 10 years old again, and I nod. I love it when he makes me feel special like this. I am the only one he talks to this way. I mean so much to him. He places an innocent hand on my shoulder and then pulls with long fingers at the lace on my sleeves. Do you like this dress I bought for you? I love it, I tell him, while I give the white lacy dress a twirl for his viewing pleasure. I never knew my dad, so this relationship is special for me. Uncle Dean always goes out of his way to do nice things for my sake. No one has to tell me how lucky I am to have him take care of me. He pulls me onto his lap, where he tugs at my fly-away curls, twisting their chestnut-colored locks in his hands. People tell him all the time what a cute little girl he has. They tell me I look like him. It's almost as if I'm his daughter and not his niece. I've been thinking, Nicole, you are getting older now. And with what a pretty girl you're turning out to be, we have some things to talk about. I look at his eyes, a cold mixture of gray and blue, and hang on to his every word. I've noticed in the past the way people look at him when we go out together. His hair is blonde and wavy in a way that complements his fair skin. His shoulders are broad, and the arms he holds me with are strong, with thick muscles. He's handsome. It's not just me who listens when he speaks. It's like the people around him can't help it. His words are always captivating. His smile makes you feel like you are the only person in the world. I'm proud he belongs to me. I'm worried boys will start giving you problems. He frowns, and it crushes me. I study his lips and wonder what's wrong with me, that boys will give me problems. I can't stand the look of displeasure on his face. I'll do anything to replace it with a smile. My fingers find the bottom of my dress where I tear at it helplessly. I can't let myself be a burden to him, not when he took responsibility for a child who wasn't his. I think it's important for me to teach you how to handle them for when you're older, don't you think? I nod, eager to cheer him up. You're a good girl, Nicole. I know you'll do fine. He leans in close to my ear, with my curls still twisted in his fingers. When you get older, men will expect you to please them. I don't want you to worry. I'll teach you how. I'll teach you everything you need to know. A voice startles me from my memories. Nicole? Nicole? Where did you go? I look up and see her. The therapist. The one who is supposed to hold all the answers to my questions. The angel who tells me none of this is my fault, and how I am not the monster he made me. I smile towards her, as if I had been here on the couch with her the whole time. I smile as if I don't remember every single lesson he taught me. Is everything all right? Her eyes are concerned. You have tears running down your face. I lift a hand to my cheek and realize she's telling the truth. I touch the wetness with fingers that don't feel like my own. This happens to me all the time. I'm in my body, but I'm not. I don't understand where the tears come from either. After all, I am a monster. I'm numb. Whether I hurt others or make them laugh, I feel nothing inside me at all. This is a safe place, Nicole. I'm here to listen. I can't help finding her words amusing. I've been to safe places before, you see. That's where I discovered safe places are the most dangerous places of all. The places where you let down your guard and trust the people around you, leave you vulnerable. Those kinds of places are where monsters live. You enter them and never know they're watching you, waiting. They wait for the moments they can bury their claws into your flesh, taking things from you that you will never get back. Monsters are real, despite those who lack conviction. It's only fools who believe in safe places. Last night, I sat on my kitchen floor and ate an entire cake. I lie to her again. I couldn't stop myself. Don't you think that makes me disgusting? I can't tell if her sympathy is real or fake. I can't tell if she only has one face, the face she looks at me with, or if she too has another one buried deep inside her. I study her cheetah print shirt and the gold hoop earrings underneath her straightened hair. I can't tell if she's human or if she's another monster like me. We hide so well sometimes that we don't even recognize the monsters deep inside ourselves. Of course, I don't think that, she tells me. Her words offer me the smallest amount of relief. I feel myself relax for only a fraction of a second. It's all I can ever relax after I turned into this creature. I give her my best smile. "You don't think I'm a monster?" She reassures me she doesn't. I slide out of her heavy wooden door after the rest of our session has passed, and remind myself she is a professional. If she saw a human without a beating heart in front of her, she would know it wasn't human anymore. The fact that she doesn't, it means there is still hope for me.